Good afternoon. We are really excited today because Bruce Grubb is going to talk to us as an informational meeting about a variety of things in which we're doing in the city of Fargo. And this journey started many years ago, I think when you even talked about carbon credits at one time, and we're surprised that that came out as a check to the city for quite a bit of money. But Bruce is going to run through the variety of things the city of Fargo is doing. And I think for all the commissioners, he's worked very hard at this. I think, John, it started with you. You had a climate change lunch with people and got a lot of stuff. And so that has stimulated Bruce to work with all the managers and come up, what are we doing about climate? Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor and Commissioners. And I do appreciate the opportunity today to present some background information regarding some things that the city has done over the years with respect to things like renewable energy, emissions reductions, and those sorts of related efforts. At the conclusion of Commissioner Strand's Climate Change Town Hall meeting last December, we thought a good follow-up might be to prepare some sort of white paper summary about things that the city has done in the past and might kind of set the tone for where we decide we'd like to go in the future. So obviously you can always do more, but I think you might be surprised. I didn't realize a lot of this myself till I started to accumulate these things. So some of the work you'll hear about dates back to the early 1990s, actually. So we've been at this to some degree or another for the past 30 years or so. So in front of you tonight is a copy of a draft white paper that we prepared, along with a summary of the town hall meeting comments that Commissioner Strand had put together. But today's informational meeting will try concentrate or focus on a review of the white paper. So I chose to organize the white paper by category. So you'll see that I've included climate resiliency, renewable energy, emissions reductions, energy efficiency, and environmental stewardship. So the presentation does follow the organization of the white paper and did that so it would make it easier to follow along. So with that, first under the category of climate resiliency, you heard a little bit about this at the last commission meeting, but we have the FM Area Diversion Project, which is a permanent flood protection project to essentially flood-proof ourselves and provide climate resiliency against flooding. Most of you have heard a lot about that project, so I won't spend a whole lot of time on it here today. It is a big project that has been years in the making. We talked about this at the last commission meeting. On the flip side of things, we have the Red River Valley Water Supply Project that is another big project to, in effect, drought-proof ourselves and provide climate resiliency against water shortages. The project will do so by importing water from the Missouri River to central and eastern North Dakota. It's a state and local project with the Garrison Diversion Conservancy District serving in a lead role as a representative of the state of North Dakota, and the Lake Agassiz Water Authority, which represents the local water users. And Fargo obviously is a member of the Lake Agassiz Water Authority and is the largest nominator for water from that project because Fargo includes West Fargo and the Casserole Water Users District as well. This is a project, similarly, it's been pursued for a long time and is now close to becoming a reality because some early construction is planned to kick off next spring. So this is our long-term or permanent solution to drought or water supply shortages. You also heard about this a little bit at the last commission meeting, but we have a short-term solution to water supply problems, and that's our drought management plan. We, for the first time, adopted a drought management plan in 2003. That was updated in 2015. And the plan contains specific measures or actions that would be taken in the event of an insufficient water supply, or if we have problems with our infrastructure, like problems at the water treatment plant or problems out in the distribution system. So those are climate resiliency efforts that I know you're not surprised about because you've heard about those recently. But under the category of renewable energy, we first dipped our toe into the renewable energy business back in 2001. That's when we began collecting methane gas at the landfill. Again, that's almost 20 years ago, but we're still the only landfill in the state of North Dakota, to my knowledge, that collects and reuses landfill gas. And we use the collected gas in a variety of ways. We deliver a portion to a local industry that they use as an alternative to natural gas. We use a portion to fuel a generator and sell the produced power to the local power grid. We use a portion of the gas to heat our big transfer station out at the landfill. And then soon we'll be converting a portion of the landfill gas to natural gas quality. And we're still looking for the most beneficial use of that. Originally, the thought was to use that to fuel garbage trucks, but it seems like the truck industry is moving more towards electric now. So we're looking at other potential uses for that refined gas. And then I mentioned the transfer station building a moment ago, but when that building was constructed in 2007, we included solar panels along the south roof line of that building, and the electricity that's produced by those solar panels is used directly at the landfill. At the same time, we also installed a commercial-grade wind turbine at the landfill as well. Similarly, that electricity is used directly at the landfill. And then more recently, we submitted an application to the Volkswagen Settlement Grant Program, and were approved for funding to install an EV charging station, a dual station right here at City Hall. It's 100% grant funded, so really a great opportunity for us. You may have noticed on the October 5th Commission agenda, we had an item on the agenda to reject the bids that we had received to procure and install that charging station because they substantially exceeded the project's estimate. So that project will be rebid this winter and installed next spring in the west parking lot of City Hall. Another renewable energy effort that was a fuel blending station at Central Garage, and that was installed in 2012. That allows the blending of standard gasoline and diesel fuels with either ethanol or biodiesel. Also under the category of renewable energy, this was really a significant effort, but that's the reuse of treated wastewater effluent that's being used as a water supply to produce ethanol, a renewable fuel. And that effort began in the fall of 2008, and since that time, the wastewater plant has provided nearly 4 billion gallons of reclaimed wastewater for the production of ethanol. Something that very few people know about, we've also incorporated geothermal energy at some of our major utility facilities, specifically at our ground storage water reservoir, South Fargo, and 2 relatively new large sanitary sewer lift stations, number 60 and 61. Those 2 lift stations were installed as part of the 45th Street Sewer Interceptor project. So it's another renewable energy effort that reduces the need for natural gas and electricity at those facilities. Another renewable energy effort that we partnered on was the Prairie Sun Community Solar Garden. That project was installed next to that same ground storage reservoir in South Fargo. That project was led by Cass County Electric and was completed in 2016. And the project included the installation of a 102 kilowatt solar array, and that was placed on city-owned land right next to the ground storage reservoir. Similar to the landfill at the wastewater treatment plant, we utilize anaerobic digestion as part of our treatment process, and those digesters produce biogas through that process. That biogas is very high quality. It's about 70% methane. and we collect that gas and utilize it as a renewable fuel in our boilers that heat administration buildings and the anaerobic digesters themselves. And we collect and utilize about 20 billion BTUs of biogas each year. Another renewable energy project certainly is the Roberts Commons parking garage that the city owns. That project is being funded in part by a North Dakota Industrial Commission grant. It involves the installation of EV chargers, solar arrays, battery storage, and includes programmable LED lighting. It is a public-private partnership and involves ChargePoint, Microsoft, XL Energy, Kilbourne Group, Border States Electric, MBN Engineering, and the city of Fargo. So that's a big effort. It hasn't all been success. I want to tell you a little bit about another effort. Starting back in 2010, we worked very hard to pursue a community wind turbine project, but for a number of reasons that included things like turbine availability and an untimely drop in renewable energy prices that we could get for the electricity coming off that turbine, we had to abandon that project. Moving on to emissions reductions. One of the initiatives that the former Renewable Energy and Conservation Committee was very involved with was the introduction of hybrid bus technology to our metropolitan area transit system. And hybrid bus technology uses a combination of electric and diesel fuel. And so the hybrid technology gets better mileage, obviously, but also produces fewer emissions than a standard diesel bus. We also introduced similar hybrid technology into a portion of our fleet vehicles. The difference here is that these are hybrid SUVs that use a combination of electric and gasoline fuel, but similar benefits, less fuel consumption, better mileage, and fewer emissions. And then this is really the big one when it comes to emissions. The most impactful project that we've done, without a doubt, is the landfill gas collection system. And that's because it's preventing methane from being released into the atmosphere. And methane is one of the most destructive greenhouse gases that exists. So on average, the landfill gas that's captured and destroyed at the landfill, got it on the screen here, it's about 5,900 metric tons of methane. That can be converted directly to CO2 emissions, and when you do that, it equates to 147,500 metric tons of avoided CO2 emissions. And that can be further translated into terms that most people can understand. That's equivalent to the average electricity used in 28,500 residential homes. Really kind of startling. But our recycling programs also aid in emissions reductions, and based on the amount of recyclables that we collected in 2019, for example, that equates to the removal of 24,140 metric tons of CO2 emissions, which is equivalent to the average electrical uses in 3,200 residential homes. So the point here is if you combine just those two efforts, landfill gas collection and recycling, from an emissions standpoint, it equates to the avoidance of about 172,000 metric tons of CO2 emissions. And so that's significant in helping to lower Fargo's carbon footprint. And then one of the other things related to emissions that's in the process of occurring is a new low emissions fire truck that we're in the process of purchasing. And again, that fire truck was approved for funding through the VW Grant Settlement Program. However, that's a 50% grant program, but the value of the grant is still $632,500, so really a significant opportunity there. In terms of energy efficiency, the recently constructed City Hall here has many energy efficient features, such as LED lighting and control system with motion detection, an HVAC system automation to balance heating and cooling requirements to minimize energy use, high efficiency glass in the building, and was insulated beyond what the building codes require. At the main library, we've got, a conversion project that will be occurring in 2021 to convert the lighting in there over to LED. That was a need identified by the library in their budget submittal, and that's been approved, and the LED lighting system will consume considerably less energy. In 2010, we actually received a North Dakota Energy Efficiency Grant that was used for an LED lighting and controls conversion at Central Garage. So that project's been completed. This is the one that really got my attention. Another big energy efficiency effort was accomplished when we switched our traffic signals to LED, and the wattage comparisons, incandescent versus LED, are shown in your white paper. I also put them on this screen because they're so striking, but we're all familiar with a red, yellow, green traffic light, but when we changed out the bulbs in the red light, we went from a 150 watt bulb to a 7 watt bulb. The yellow lights, we went from a 116 watt bulb to an 11 watt bulb. And the green lights went from a 116 watt bulb to an 8 watt bulb. And then in addition to that, we also have over 1,100 pedestrian signals throughout town. And those went from a 90 watt bulb to a 6 watt bulb. For the streetlights to date, we've completed about 3,200 of the total 14,000 streetlights we have in Fargo. We continue to change out streetlights at a pace of about 500 per year. And by switching out the old high-pressure sodium bulbs to LED, we use about 50% electricity. And again, I showed those comparables in the white paper and put it on the screen so you can just see the energy efficiency that's gained by going to LED alone. We recently completed an expansion of our water treatment plant, which increased our treatment capacity from 30 million gallons per day to 45 million gallons per day. And that expansion utilizes new membrane treatment technology, ultrafiltration membranes followed by reverse osmosis membranes. So it's advanced technology with respect to water treatment, but at the same time, we also incorporated energy efficient features into that expansion. And I've listed those things on the screen here. We're utilizing the most high efficient pumps and motors available on the market today. We went with a white membrane roof material to absorb less heat. We do have a rainwater harvesting system that utilizes collected rainwater for irrigation purposes. We have LED lights throughout. Again, that's insulated beyond what the building codes require. High efficiency glass as well. And what I really like here is they utilize something called SCADA to chart trends and track energy usage. And SCADA stands for Supervisory Control and Data Acquisition. And so it's the actual water treatment plant control system. So constantly tracking energy use trends. We're also under construction for a wastewater plant expansion as we speak. That will introduce or increase the treatment plant's capacity from 26 million gallons per day to 50 million gallons per day. Similarly, it's incorporating more advanced treatment technology, something called IFAS, which stands for Integrated Fixed Film Activated Sludge. But at the same time, similarly, we added energy efficient features into the design of the new facility. Again, the most high efficient pumps and motors available on the market. This will have an HVAC system that utilizes heat recovery. LED lights, once again, insulated beyond building code requirements. And one thing unique about this facility, that will be able and will utilize digester gas for heating buildings. And again, also similarly, this plant will use their system to track energy usage and trends. Something most people don't know about, we've also started to incorporate something called variable frequency drives on the pumps in our wastewater and stormwater lift stations. We also use these in the 2 treatment plants as well. But we currently have 69 regional wastewater lift stations and 81 stormwater lift stations. And so with VFDs, the pumps consume considerably less energy because we can vary the speed of the pumps. We also, on nearly all of our emergency generators, including at both treatment plants, we're on load shedding programs for both electricity and natural gas, XL Energy and Cass County Electric. And so during peak demand periods, we can be removed from either the XL Energy system or the Cass County Electric system, and in exchange for being able to take off their load, we get a reduced commercial rate from them. Building Inspections has also formally adopted the 2018 International Energy Conservation Code, which applies to all residential and commercial buildings for energy efficiency, insulation, other building standards, doors, windows. And then another energy efficiency effort that will be starting shortly is an energy load profile study led by our facilities management team. This will be a study effort to identify baseline energy demands and emissions in city facilities. And so it was decided to initially start with a city building on the XL system and a city building on the Cass County Electric system. Still working on that. But by establishing an energy use baseline, we can then look for ways to increase energy efficiency in facilities and go through the economics of certain things and make good decisions. So really anxious to get that started. And then the final category, environmental stewardship, I go back again to the wastewater reuse project. Treated wastewater effluent being used as a water supply to produce ethanol. By doing so, it's environmentally friendly by avoiding the need for the ethanol producer to either tap an aquifer or a river source or use treated drinking water. So it's also a conservation effort. In that regard, we as well, with the expansion project, when completed, will be using a portion of the treated effluent for maintenance purposes like cleaning and wash down activities, and we've estimated that on a daily basis we'll reuse nearly 2 million gallons of reclaimed water every day for those purposes. We have installed a couple of rainwater collection and reuse projects as well. One you've already heard about at the water treatment plant, but we also have one installed at our Metro Transit garage. And so those systems collect rainwater from the building roofs and use it to irrigate the grounds, another water conservation method. It's not a green roof, but the main library has 2 green rooflets, one over the west entrance and one over the east entrance. Those rooflets were constructed with the library back in 2008, and they were included in an effort to try have that facility LEED certified. I don't think that was ever accomplished, but that was the intent. So we do have 2 rooflets on one city facility. And then the World Garden Commons at Rabanus Park was completed as part of the Fargo project that you probably heard about. This project took an 18-acre dry stormwater detention basin and created a combination of stormwater basin and ecological community commons area, and I believe this was grant funded through the Kresge Foundation in a large way. Now we go back in time a little bit. The landfill has been composting yard waste, which is leaves and grass clippings, since the early 90s, and this was done in an effort to keep compostable organic materials out of the landfill. And the finished and screened compost material is made available to the public. I think it's twice a year and has become very popular with residents and businesses. This you may not know about. We also partnered with Microsoft to conduct a food waste composting pilot project, and Microsoft delivered biodegradable paper and utensils food products from their dining service out to the compost site. And we ran a pilot project. Microsoft was interested in trying to keep those products out of the landfill. So unfortunately, the pilot project concluded that the rate of decomposition between biodegradable food waste products and leaves and lawn clippings were so different that biodegradable food waste products being incorporated into our already established compost program didn't work well, unfortunately. This you may or may not know about, but in the early 90s, the Environmental Protection Agency came out with something called their Subtitle D regulations for municipal landfills. And those regulations required that landfills be constructed with liners at the bottom, the base of the landfill, and leachate collection systems. Well, subsequent to those federal rules, the state of North Dakota came out with additional rules that required double liners and double leachate collection systems for all industrial or municipal landfills in the state that receive over 500 tons per day, which Fargo's was one of those. So by constructing and operating a hazardous waste facility, the solid waste utility was successful in getting a waiver from the state of North Dakota's double rule because it was such a significant effort to keep hazardous materials out of the landfill. The solid waste utility also operates a residential curbside recycling program. My recycling day was a week ago, but not today. Since that program was implemented, the curbside recycling rate has an over 80% participation rate. They also operate a drop site recycling program to provide recycling opportunities to our multifamily residents and businesses as well. We have a large component of apartments and multifamily residences in Fargo. We also offer some specialty recycling events for things like electronics and phone books and holiday lighting, those types of things. And then the wastewater utility has a sump pump program to ensure that sump pump discharge goes into the storm sewer rather than the sanitary sewer. And this is done in an effort to avoid sewer backup into private property and public property and causing damage. But the upside to this is it also limits the amount of sanitary sewage that needs to be pumped up to the wastewater treatment plant and then treated through the treatment plant operation. This is an interesting one. Our planning department also manages an energy efficiency and conservation block grant program to promote energy efficiency and conservation. And that program uses funding provided by the Department of Energy and the State Energy Program. And just a few examples of projects that have been funded through that. The Go 2030 Comprehensive Plan was funded through that program. Various energy efficiency upgrades in city facilities. And then the recent purchase of an asphalt recycler for public works, just to name a few. And then the Go 2030 Comprehensive Plan that I just mentioned a moment ago is a visioning document promoting, among other things, the principles of energy conservation, and it includes strategies to promote walkability, infill, and density. And then more recently, 2018 or 2019, it's been a couple of years now, a strategic plan for downtown was adopted titled In Focus that I think you're all somewhat familiar with. And this plan includes recommendations for multimodal transportation and promotes green infrastructure principles such as stormwater management to help us create more environmental resilience. And so thanks for your time. That's my presentation.
Excellent job, Bruce. You've been working on this for a month, so I think it is really an excellent summation of what the city has been doing, and it is very proactive. So I'm very pleased. Go ahead.
Well, I wanted to mention that I also provided the summary of comments received at Commissioner Strand's brown bag meeting. I'm sorry, town hall meeting. And I wanted to mention that I will be coming forward with a recommendation for a reformulation on the Renewable Energy and Conservation Committee. And so if you have some thoughts on the reformulation of that committee, I would really entertain those today so I can work toward getting some reformulation of that committee that the commission thinks makes sense.
And we've heard there's also a group in town that's working on that as well, so we may want to incorporate that. I think John has some names that we may want to get some public involvement of some people on it that have a keen interest in this as well. Any questions of the commissioners?
I took it off so you couldn't hear me chewing the potato chips. This is great, wonderful. But I'm wondering what the plan is going forward. What other additional projects? Is there some talk about trying to encourage the private sector to follow the lead?
Yes, I was kind of thinking about the reformulated Renewable Energy and Conservation Committee and thought, what could we do? Well, number one, we've kind of got a baseline of things we have done. I would like to try to figure out what the city's carbon footprint is today. And what we did something along those lines back in 2005, working with the solid waste utility, but that was trying to gain membership to the Chicago Climate Exchange, where we were able to cash in some carbon credits. But that just dealt with city facilities, a stationary category, our buildings that we own, and a non-stationary city vehicle. So it isn't a real city-wide estimation of the carbon footprint. But at that time, the city's carbon footprint from those two sources was about 11,000 metric tons. And when I go back now and look at the avoided tonnage of CO2 emissions just through that landfill gas collection thing, feel really good about that. So that would be my first thought.
John?
Thank you, Bruce. You know, it's really good to have our community see our efforts in the past and moment present, and to have a be able to quantify it. I don't know that any of us, I didn't know how much is going on. We have questions, but we don't know. And what I like about this, it gives us a baseline going forward. And I hope we keep it alive and dynamic. But I'm curious, and I know Commissioner Pepcorn and I have ridden in electric cars and autonomous vehicles, and I'm just curious what you think things will look like in Fargo in 10 years or down the road. How much change will we see on all of these fronts?
I got to tell you, I think I mentioned earlier, we're taking a portion of the collected landfill gas now and purifying it to a higher grade of fuel. And the idea at that time was there seemed like in the truck movement, fueling with natural gas, the equivalent of our landfill gas, what it will be, we thought, well, how great would that be for a garbage truck driving down the street to be fueled with the very garbage that they put out and got deposited the other day. But the industry, it seems to be going electric, whether it's passenger vehicles, truck vehicles. And so we're looking for the highest and best use for that gas, but we're really kind of focusing on the future of electric in our fleet.
What do you, if I might continue, Mayor?
Sure.
What do you think is our most pressing challenge?
Well, it's completing permanent flood protection and permanent water supply.
That's
I mean, the good news in those is I think they're further along today than they have been in my 31-year career here. So that climate resiliency piece is really important. It doesn't solve climate issues, but getting yourself resilient while you work on those other issues, I think is really important.
I think the other thing commissioners should be aware is Brock's in the back of the room, and he's going through all our facilities and looking if there's other ways of being more efficient and looking at our plants and those types of things. I think Commissioner Strand, sometimes you said, do we have a lookout for 10, 20 years? What do we need to do and how do we need to do it? So that's one of the assignments he has, to look at all our facilities and see what we had to do. The library LED light came up through that discussion, and that's where some of those good ideas have started to evolve. It's just, what else can we do? So we're always, as a city, going to look to ways to be more efficient, to be more aware of our environment and what we can do better. Any other questions? Dave, you have any questions? No? Arlette, go ahead.
So Bruce, I've had some individuals approach me, as well as I'm serving on the Food Commission, and there's been a lot of conversation about the use of herbicides or weed control on public lands. And I remember when the water plant was first built, there was xeriscaping around it, which is a water conservation effort. This would fall more into the environmental, that last category. And wondering if there has been some conversation about, and as we redesign the plaza, I'm looking at the plans that are possible. It certainly incorporates, I think, some of those ideas, but looking at any of the public land we have, which, whether it be on riverfront that has been purchased because of flood control, what are we doing there in that regard?
Well, at this point in time, the flood acquired properties get the minimal. They try to establish grass. But grass requires maintenance. It's a quick fix to change it from dirt to something. But what I did like about the Xeriscape project at the landfill is it's not no maintenance, but it certainly is a water conservation measure. And that had a walking path through it that you'd be surprised how much that got used. Well, to expand the water plant, we always knew that that's where it would go, but we really haven't established kind of a Xeriscape type of theme in our city yet. But I think that's one of the things this reform committee could certainly try get done.
I can see that being a policy recommendation, that all public property be using that for landscaping. That would be wonderful.
Yeah, I think some of, I read through Commissioner Strand's comments from your town hall, and that was one or two of the comments with all the acquired vacant flood buyout property that you can't put anything structurally on. Is there something you could do in the way of planting to make it more environmentally friendly? And I think the answer is probably yes.
Any other questions? John?
Just briefly, Bruce, I'm curious about what you're presenting to us is the city of Fargo. I'm curious about our interaction or intersection working relationship with the school districts, with the park district, with other government, quasi-government subdivisions. How do we all work together?
There hasn't been a big effort in that regard, but I think there should be. We work very closely with the school and park districts on a lot of different fronts, and so we would welcome. My thought was that I may take this to the park district and the school district just to give them an idea. It's not to brag. It's just, here are things that have been accomplished, and maybe get their talk about collaboration with them.
And perhaps when you revisit your energy resiliency committee approach, maybe there's some seats at the table, not only for the public, but for those other entities. So we're all working together. I like that idea too.
And the other thing that when I do come forward and make a recommendation on that committee makeup, I'm trying to figure out how we can bring the private utility companies along as well, XL Energy and Cass County Electric, because when you look at what we're talking about here, they really can play a huge role in this.
Just a point of clarification, since I am fairly new to all this committee, was it something that existed before, or is this a brand new committee that you're trying to form?
This was a committee that was formed, I think it was 2006. Commissioner Williams, when he first got elected, obviously he's got an interest in this topic, and so he came to the city commission and said, hey, look, I'd like to form this committee and we can work on a number of things, which he did. And at that time, the commission named by position and named the committee members, and it included not just Mike, but Dennis Wallaker, Pat Zavro, half of those members are no longer even with us. And it kind of, without a champion, it did kind of get put on hold for a little bit, but now we're back, so we'd like to restart it.
Are you volunteering? I sense a volunteer in the room. I think we'd all be very interested in getting that revived. I think that's really important for us. Any other business, Commission? This is fantastic. That was a great presentation, Bruce, and I do think it highlights the fact that we're always thinking in the city of Fargo, what can we do better? And Ben Dowell's in here now. You got that assignment of how we're going to do all those dikes and berms that we have to take care of, and minimum homicide, and try to make it some type of ecology-minded stuff, Ben. So I'm looking forward to your presentation on that next time we get together. But I think when we think of all the acreage, when we look at the diversion and how much stuff we have out there, what are we going to do with it? And I think that's a great question. We've also put a challenge out there to the entrepreneurs of, is there an automatic way of mowing the lawns rather than having all the people and all the efforts that takes? So it is kind of an interesting dialogue, is how do you get that to minimally impact, and what can we do different, better? So I look forward to great conversations on this. And I'm assuming, Bruce, that we'll bring this committee up, ecology committee up sometime in the future and start to fill the names in.
Before the end of the year, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, if I just took a draft attempt, there are certain staff members that I think are kind of important because they control certain elements of what we're doing here, but the public participation, school, park district, private utilities, still working on that component. So whether it's 2 at-large public members or 10, just getting a number and then figuring out a way for people to be able to volunteer to participate on that committee.
Yeah, Ben, it's hardly snowing, so you have a lot of time right now to help us with that, don't you? Go ahead, Arthur.
This is such a great revisiting of Go 2030. I'm wondering if we couldn't do some additional brown bag seminars or lunches on the other topics inside that plan to see how much advancement we've made on each one of them. That would be wonderful.
That's interesting. Michael and I just participated on a virtual meeting with Nicole, and of course she knew this meeting was coming up and drew that same connection, Go 2030 and in focus. So we are talking about that, how we do that.
And Nicole's here, so she loves to hear she has another assignment.
One last comment. I'd like to thank the citizens who last November participated in this town hall discussion, and it's good to have them know. We all got derailed with the pandemic. Our whole worlds have changed, but it's really important, and thank you, Bruce, and your team for letting them know and putting out the evidence. We heard them. We're still listening to them. We're paying attention to their best thinking. We will be reaching out to them to include them in future actions. And it gives us this moment present report card, but also an action plan going forward with all of us participating. So that's just really good to have us let the community know that wasn't put on a shelf somewhere. It's still very much alive and viable and being studied and incorporated into your leadership and our action plans. So thank you for letting them know that as well.
Commissioner Pipgard.
I have a question for Bruce. So if we do an audit of the city, our carbon footprint, how in the world do you do that? And is that something that an outside group comes in and does? And then could we have one done just for our city, the city specific things, and then also the city as a whole? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. I think the overall carbon footprint is one thing. There are ways on the EPA website where they have calculators that will allow you, based on what type of businesses you have, how many residential homes, how many multifamily homes, vehicles driven, those type things. But the energy use baseline that we'd like to try start with a couple city buildings is something that there are local consultants that's what they do. We've already spoken with XL Energy and Cass County Electric saying We're going to need your cooperation in this, and they're all on board. So we've been speaking to consultants that they've done this before. We don't have to reinvent the wheel, but we can get started.
So it's something that'll be in the budget that so these assessments, so I think we as a commission, obviously, we would very much support that. So that's the one thing. And then, we're talking about all the money that we can save. I think all of us are in favor of that from the perspective of being more efficient as a city. So there's lots of, and when the mayor talked autonomous mowers, that might sound a little bit frivolous, but that's a legit thing. And Ben can maybe talk about that. But if you multiply all the acres that the park district and the school district and us have to mow, and if you don't have to have humans doing that, and they actually have them right now, they do. And so to me, things like that. And the question I had for you was, so we had lots of, the people that came and spoke at John's. If people have suggestions on how to help our city, what's the route? Should they send us an email, or is there going to be an opportunity for them to? Because there's lots of people in our city that have lots of good ideas. Can you just talk a little bit about that?
I think coming out of this kind of informational session, we're going to have to make something available on our website for people to go to and offer comments and those types of things. And we'll have to put out some sort of press release. We've got to reach people. Sometimes you just put things on a website, but if nobody knows it's there. So I'm thinking some sort of press release that hits all the media.
Just one more, Mr. Chair. So the main thing, there's lots of people that have suggestions for us as a city to do better and for us to actually look at them and respond to them. I think that'd be good. So that's maybe one of the first things that this new committee, when you meet, review some of these suggestions and say, we will take a look at these, because in your list, the people that came and spoke, there was lots of ideas. Some of them are legit and some aren't legit, but to have them evaluated, I think that means a lot to people. And I think if it makes our city a better city, then that's what we should do. All right, thanks. I apologize for rambling at the end, but thank you.
Well, we finally got you excited, so we're happy to see that. So, any other business of the group?
Mayor, one last comment. I hate to overload you because you're really busy with all sorts of things today. We know that, but Monday there's another one of these, and it's related to small cells. So when you talk about the future of autonomy directly related to small cells, so that might interest you about Monday's informational meeting.
You're getting us educated. Thanks.
Yeah.
Well, if there's no other business, we'll call this to an end. Thank you very much, Bruce. Great work. And thanks for the team that helped you out. I know all your managers are scrambling, trying to think what they had done and how well they had done it. And it's really a pleasure to see the city so far forward thinking. Thank you.
Thank you.